Deep in the harshest desert on the planet, a kryptonite megabomb has just been unleashed, the fallout of which has spread the Kryptonian cloud far across the atmosphere. The entire planet now chokes in its deadly green glow. One man, the hero Steel, looks into the explosion and shouts for the friend he knows was just impacted. "Superman!" he yells against the wind. "Hang on, I'm coming for you!" Looking down at the crater, Steel receives a call from the commanding officer behind the strike. "This is Lane!" the senator yells in Steel's ear. "You hit him with everything you have, you hear me?" Steel stares down at the body of Superman, tears forming in his eyes.
"No need for that, Senator. You've already won."
But Senator Lane still roars in fear and anger. "No, you moron! The kryptonite, it just weakened the part of Superman that was still Superman. And now, all that's left is doom." As Steel listens, he watches the corpse of Clark Kent stir once more. Rocky, rough-hewn skin sprouts from Clark's face and body as he roars and tears into the sky. Superman was no more. Doomsday had arrived. Inside his broken, diseased mind, Superman had two entities battling for control. Doomsday stared down at the frail body of Clark Kent, growling,
"You're losing it. I get stronger as you get weaker. Kryptonite doesn't affect me at all. But you? I'm going to kill what's left of you first. And then I'll go back to killing everything else."
"No, you won't," Clark spat back at the creature. "I'll get this under control." Doomsday's fist launched out at Clark, but he didn't even flinch.
"You don't get it, Blue. I'm not some bad guy, something you can punch. I'm death. And if there's any truth to existence at all, it is this. Everything dies."
Doomsday rumbled as he pulled Clark in close. Outside of Clark's head, his body was convulsing and roaring as Superman was completely overtaken by the Doomsday disease. Green clouds spread further and further across the globe as the kryptonite in the air dispersed across the atmosphere. Wonder Woman was at the end of her rope and went in search of an old friend for assistance. "You have to help him, Hessia," Diana told her fellow Amazon. "I've never seen anything like this," Hessia told the princess. "Everything that gets close to him dies." Diana wouldn't hear any doubts. "Hessia, you are the greatest healer Thymyscira ever produced. Please, I'm begging you." Hessia stood tall and removed a golden helm and belt from her pack. "For you, Diana, I do this for you," she said as her armor transformed Hessia into a glittering Amazonian warrior before Wonder Woman's very eyes. Hessia took off towards the monster that was once Superman. When she landed before the creature, Superman's mind was nowhere to be found. Doomsday looked Hessia up and down, considering if she was a friend or foe. But rather than attempt to heal Clark, Hessia shouted, "Die!" and leapt at him with her axe raised above her head. Hessia brutally attacked Superman, clearly trying to sever his rocky head from his shoulders. Seeing this, Diana couldn't help but enter the fray herself. "You said you would heal him, Hessia," she shouted at her sister. "I must look after the world as well," Hessia admitted to Diana. "If I am to save this world, then he can no longer be in it." Diana begged Hessia to listen. She believed more than anything that Clark was still inside Doomsday, fighting to keep him at bay. "Do you think so? Then watch and tell me again," Hessia demanded as she jumped towards the monster once more. As she reached Doomsday, Hessia whispered in Clark's ear that it had been her that leaked the details of Superman and Wonder Woman's relationship to the public. "I thought you were good for each other," she whispered in his ear. "I was wrong." With that, Doomsday's arm came up, cracking Hessia across the jaw and sending her flying across the battlefield. As Hessia stood, Doomsday's next blow came faster and certainly would have ended the Amazonian's life right then and there had Diana not jumped between them. With her mystical powers in full swing, Wonder Woman bellowed, "Stop!" as she put herself in Doomsday's path. The strength of her battle cry sent Clark off balance, and Diana took advantage of this momentary weakness to tie up Doomsday in her lasso. Wonder Woman took to the skies, flying as high as she could manage into the atmosphere. She hoisted Clark above the kryptonite gas clouds, allowing the sun's rays to reach his skin once more. Doomsday began to shrink, and Clark's consciousness once again won over control of his body. I'm back, Diana, Clark managed to say as they ascended into the void of space. I knew you weren't lost to us, Diana said longingly. I can't survive up here for long, she told Clark, who understood what he must do next. Where will you go? Wonder Woman asked him. Somewhere I can't hurt anyone. Somewhere I can get this under control, Clark said, not looking her in the eyes. Both knew that this could very well be the last time they spoke. It would not be safe for Superman to return to Earth, perhaps ever again. We've only gone dancing once, Diana said sadly. I will come back to you, Clark promised her, praying his words were true. I know, darling, Wonder Woman told him. Go. Clark flew away, getting further and further from the kryptonite-choked Earth. As he flew, he started to feel better and better. That is, until a red energy beam streaked through the stars and struck Superman directly in the back. When he turned, 3 red lanterns, including Zox, Guy Gardner, and even Supergirl, looked back at Superman with anger flashing in their eyes. When Superman looked back at them, Doomsday was already starting to return to full control as the red lanterns descended on him. Now! Gardner shouted as the 3 red lanterns unleashed their ring's energy at Doomsday. Clark roared in pain as the red blast smashed into him, releasing the beast inside even further. Soon, Clark lost all control over himself once more. He raced towards his attackers, nearly killing Zox in one blow as he tried to rip all 3 to pieces. Superman tossed the red lanterns all the way down to Earth, where they smashed into the polar ice caps. Can we stop him? Kara asked as they regrouped. We have to, Kara, Guy Gardner said, but before he could issue any orders, a golden lasso encircled the man and pulled him down. Let him go, Supergirl called to Wonder Woman, but Gardner knew resistance was futile. Why did you attack Superman? Diana asked. We protect the Earth. It's our job, Guy told her, compelled to truth by her magic lasso. Superman told me about you, Diana said. The lanterns who have mastered their rage. He's not a threat to the Earth. Not anymore. He's leaving. She looked out at the 3 of them. Go after him. You'll never beat him, but maybe you can help him. Superman, meanwhile, continued his journey into deep space, removing himself as far as possible from the planet he loved, and his very presence now threatened. Meanwhile, Lana Lang and Steel were both getting ready to board a deep space mission from Smallville. They had decided to head off amongst the stars to track down and help Superman wherever he might be heading. On their way off the planet, however, the government sent some drones to stop them. Lana and Steel simply used the robots as target practice on their way out of the atmosphere and headed off into space. Superman, flying through the outer solar system, was moving faster than he ever had. I had this idea that if I just let go, he thinks as he smashes his way through a hurtling asteroid the size of a planet. I might burn this Doomsday infection out, but the more I smash, the more terrified I become, because that awful thing inside of me is just getting stronger. Suddenly, a space rock hurtles out of nowhere and knocks Superman directly on the chin. Who? He rumbles angrily as his Doomsday side begins to take over. There's still enough Kal in there to recognize his cousin? Supergirl asked, wielding her ring of power as an emissary of the Red Lanterns. I thought you might need a little help getting in touch with your angry side. She smiled.
You need to get the hell out of here,
Clark bellowed,
before you get hurt.
Kara scoffed in his face. Calm down, Kal, just listen, she said, flying up to the monster that had taken over her cousin. Look at us, we're magnificent, she told him before slugging Superman across the jaw with a sucker punch. You're the greatest hero the universe has ever seen, she said as she took over into the stars. You just need to find something to smash. Superman raced after her, his rage filling his belly as Doomsday once again took over. Supergirl led her cousin to the other side of the solar system, where an alien species was evacuating their home as their moon began deteriorating under their feet. "Everyone here's about to die," Kara said, "unless you help them." For the first time in his life, Superman hesitated.
I don't want to make things worse,"
he said, holding himself back, afraid to give in to his new violent side. "I don't see how that's remotely possible," Supergirl told him as the moon began to crack and sizzle. Down on the surface, a villainous tyrant was chiding the people.
"This is the end,"
he said, taunting the civilians he was about to destroy.
"Damn straight,"
Superman said as he landed on the surface of the dying moon. Tentatively, Superman gives in to the Doomsday virus and lets the monster take control as he battles the Moon Killer blow for blow, eventually releasing all of his inhibitions and accepting Kara's words of encouragement. Superman's anger takes over, and he's able not only to stop the Moon Killer, but save the fleet of fleeing ships by smashing the asteroid rubble before it's able to destroy the civilians' escape. As Superman discovered the power behind his newfound rage, Lana Lang and Steel were tracking his every movement and rocketing into space at top speed. Before long, though, they got a transmission from Earth. The mysterious comatose that had struck the town of Smallville was spreading and had now reached all of Metropolis. Lana managed to get in contact with Lois Lane, warning her of the incoming danger, but little did she know that Lois's mind was actually being controlled by Brainiac, and that Lois knew who was behind the attacks better than anyone. As Lana worked the communicator, Steel stared out the windows into space. Without warning, something horrible came into view. A legion of battleships, complete with a cyborg Superman, went flying past Lana and Steel, heading directly towards Earth. Lana desperately grabbed the controls and tried to steer them away from the incoming legions. Despite her expert maneuvering, the two heroes were outnumbered and outgunned. It was only a matter of time before the ship was overrun and the two of them were sucked into space. But then, as a rocket barreled towards their ship, something dashed out of the vacuum of space and stood in front of the rocket. A giant Doomsday Superman had arrived, and he wouldn't let his friends die that easily. Superman floated peacefully within the battalion that surrounded him. He looked around and saw only robotic foes at every turn. Suddenly, he realized,
"I can let go."
His Doomsday face grinned, and within moments, Superman had ripped through the entire war machine with extreme prejudice. Lana watched from the window. What is he, Steel?" she asked, frightened by what she was seeing. "I'm not sure I could tell you, Lana," Steel said as he watched on, "but I think he may be what we need." Back on Earth, the planet was reeling after the entire city of Metropolis fell into a coma simultaneously. So complete was the chaos that barely anyone noticed. One little reporter, Lois Lane to be exact, marched into the sleeping city confidently. As she walked through the city streets, Brainiac's drones began teleporting in behind her. "It is time," Lois recited as her eyes began to glow. "Become now," she said, her mouth opening and erupting with purple light. A cocoon of metal began to coalesce around Lois, and when the shell broke, she was transformed into something completely different. She was a disciple of Brainiac now. "Go," she told the legions of robots at her command. From behind her, a soft voice spoke up. "Lois? Lois Lane?" Wonder Woman flew up to Lois as the drones began assembling something in the middle of the city. "What happened to you? Are you all right?" "I'm fine," Lois told her. Diana looked around. "This thing you're building, what is it? Did you do this? Shut down Metropolis?" Lois looked confused. "No? Maybe. I don't know. I don't understand this any more than you do," she said truthfully. Then, without warning, Lois sent a laser beam directly at Diana, sending her screaming in pain and hurtling back through the air. Across the galaxy, Steel had exited the spaceship and was attempting to make contact with the Superman he once knew. Steel offered assistance to Clark to try and help cure him of his disease.
"I don't need any help,"
Doomsday Clark snapped at him as he flew away without another word. Meanwhile, Diana was quaking on the ground as electricity coursed through her system and Brainiac's psychic waves took their dreadful effect. "No!" Diana cried, breaking free of the short circuit that held her in painful stasis. "What is this? What are you doing, Lois? Who is this for?" Diana asked, angry but confused. "I serve the Seeker, the Collector, Brainiac," Lois recited as Diana's lasso compelled her to truth. But behind Wonder Woman, Lois was willing a champion of her own into existence. Atomic Skull, reconstituted as a robotic zombie, began charging into battle against Wonder Woman. Diana was momentarily stunned by the Skull's attack, but ultimately made quick work of the villain, launching her sword straight through the Skull's newly made robotic form. Lois ripped the head off of the robot and took off into the sky, leaving Wonder Woman dazed and thoroughly confused. Superman, having halfway ripped through Brainiac's army, faced off against his cyborg clone alone in the depths of space.
What are you supposed to be?
"You're better. That is all you need to know," the cyborg shot back. "You can't destroy every ship," the cyborg said knowingly, daring Superman to return to Earth. Both men knew that this would likely be a one-way trip for Clark, but nonetheless, Superman had no other option. "Perhaps it is a blessing that our planet is gone," the cyborg told Clark, his laser vision bouncing harmlessly off of Doomsday's rough skin. Superman reached out and ripped the metal doppelganger's arm clean off. He held the arm in his gargantuan hand for a moment before making the cyborg Superman watch him crush the appendage between his fingers. The robot smiled. "I kept you here long enough for my fleet to reach Earth," he seethed. "You're too late." Clark couldn't even hear his last words as he was already barreling towards Earth. At the Watchtower, an emergency meeting of the Justice League was called. "That's a lot of ships," Flash said worryingly as they watched on their radar an entire battalion approach the Earth. Suddenly, Cyborg, the heroic one, kneeled over from an attack virus. "Batman," Diana radioed. "We've gone dark up here, and Cyborg's down. Get us a status report when you can." Instead of Bruce radioing back, Steel and Lana Lang came into range of communications. Steel explained that the incoming fleet was indeed hostile and led by some sort of robot Superman. Lana explained that she believed Brainiac was hoping to depower the entire planet at once by releasing a network of attacks all across the globe, making his conquest of the planet simple and easy. Miles out into space, too small for their radars to detect, Clark watched his friends scramble to mount their defenses on the Watchtower. He listened as their communications whizzed back and forth from the planet to the satellite. His eyes narrowed as the two beings inside his head fought for control. "I have to go down there. That's my home," Clark pleaded with the monster.
Go for it.
Doomsday sneered. "I know what you're thinking. The kryptonite's still in the air. I won't be able to hold you back. You'll take over," Clark said defiantly. Doomsday only smiled wider.
Nah, I just think you're right. That's your home. It needs you.
He rumbled with satisfaction behind his voice. Both halves of Superman knew that Clark would lose control when he reached the surface, but Clark saw no alternative save letting his adopted planet burn. "I can help them," he said.
Jonathan Kent would be proud of you,
Doomsday told him. As soon as Superman descended towards the planet, the kryptonite was already starting to take effect. Doomsday stood over the kneeling Clark.
I think you made the right decision, Clark,
he said, preparing to take over the body once and for all.
I really did.
On the ground, the world's heroes were desperately trying to keep Brainiac's forces from overwhelming the planet. Superman touched down amidst the worst of the fighting, instantly saving the lives of both Green Lantern and Hawkman. Batman and Diana heard that Superman had returned and knew instantly that their priority was to find a way to suck the kryptonite from the atmosphere and make Clark's life a lot easier. Luckily, Batman was already positioned perfectly at the Fortress of Solitude to enact the plan. Lana and Steel, still traveling towards home, watched as the cyborg Superman scurried away from the fighting to tend to some kind of giant portal hidden behind the moon. Steel armored up, sensing that a fight was incoming and knowing that no one else was coming to save them if they failed to take down the gate. Superman, meanwhile, was fighting a war on two fronts. Not only was his body trying desperately to make the difference in the battle against Brainiac's forces, but his mind was losing the fight against Doomsday for control. Clark knew that in his Doomsday form, all life simply burst into flame around him, so he begged Doomsday to stay away from populated areas.
It's what I do. I kill things.
Doomsday taunted him as he struggled. Finally, Wonder Woman arrived to slow the Doomsday Superman before he could do any real damage to the population.
You have to slow him down. Buy me time.
Batman yelled over her communicator as he tried to extract the kryptonite from the upper atmosphere. Diana activated her full mythical powers and jumped into battle against Superman. She wasn't sure if this was a fight she could win, but she'd be damned if she didn't at least try to save Clark. As the battle for Earth progressed, Steel confronted the Cyborg Superman. "Hey," he said, "that's a gate. You want to bring something through. I'm going to break it." The cyborg simply stared at him. The two Supermen traded laser vision blasts almost simultaneously, though Steel took the full brunt of the blast. Before he could react, the cyborg slammed into Steel again, sending him plummeting into space. Before the cyborg could finish the job, Lana managed to fire a laser directly at the doppelganger, knocking him off balance. The cyborg followed up, ripping a hole in Lana's ship with his laser sight. "No!" Steel yelled, racing to save Lana's life as the air was quickly sucked from inside the ship. "Clark!" Diana screamed as she struggled to keep Doomsday's attacks at bay. "I know you're still in there. You have to stop!" Inside his mind, Clark tried desperately to take Doomsday down, but it was no use with the kryptonite surging through his system. Doomsday tossed Diana aside with ease, but she put herself in his path once more, trying everything to get through to him, while Steel barely managed to save Lana and carry her off the burning ship. Diana tried her best to hold Doomsday back as he walked into the town. Simultaneously, Doomsday began cracking Clark's skull under his foot, attempting to rid himself of the pesky Clark Kent once and for all.
Time to go,
he growled. Diana swings back her sword, just as Batman succeeded in sucking the poison from Earth's skies. "You made me promise, Clark," Diana cried as she prepared to sever the head of her friend. "You made me promise!" At the very last second, Clark was purified of the kryptonite's effects and flipped Doomsday off of him without breaking a sweat. "Looks like you were right," Clark smiled. "It is time to go." Diana's blade stayed its swing just as it touched Clark's neck.
"It's all right, Diana."
Clark smiled at her.
"I'm back."
All across the planet, the heroes' efforts began yielding results as the alien invasion was held back. But in deep space, Steel and Lana had failed to destroy the mysterious gate. As the world held its breath, the full might and terror of Brainiac's forces erupted from the gates and began to encircle the world menacingly. In Metropolis, Lois Lane stared up into the sky as her master came forth to free the world. But within her mind, a battle similar to Clark's was being fought between her true self and Brainiac's drone. "Let me out!" she screamed at her captor as she struggled to escape the cage she was trapped in. Brainiac didn't speak. He simply let her struggle helplessly. Brainiac's entire fleet of monsters and warships was approaching Earth at full speed, and Lois Lane was in the middle of it all. "Brainiac!" she cried as she was forced to watch the alien forces decimate her city, her planet, and her friends and family. The Justice League, however, hadn't resigned itself to defeat just yet. From the Fortress of Solitude, Batman began to devise an ingenious plan alongside Lex Luthor. On the ground, the street-level heroes like Arsenal and Red Hood tried their best to clear the streets of civilians and keep the fighting contained. But it wasn't until Superman arrived, free of his mental virus but still with his full Doomsday powers, that the battle started turning in Earth's favor.
"Don't worry,"
he whispered as he tore through Brainiac's forces with ease.
"I'm here."
But as he approached populated areas, Doomsday's death field began affecting the people around him.
"You can't help them like this!"
Batman yelled in his ear. Get out of there! Batman and Lex released the villain Phantom King from the Phantom Zone within the Fortress of Solitude. They instructed the hero, Harrow, to convince the Phantom King to help. Martian Manhunter, meanwhile, provided Superman with a nifty mental block, allowing him to maintain his human form. But it was the creature Baka that truly allowed Superman control over himself once more. Baka belongs with his friend, he bellowed as Superman turned to Doomsday once more, and the two flew off to take down Brainiac's legions together. Back at the fortress, Batman was commanding the entire planetary defense single-handedly. The radio crackled to life as Wonder Woman called in. "You won't just deploy some sort of master scheme to destroy him?" she asked Batman, knowing that if Clark lost himself once more, Bruce wouldn't hesitate to take him out. Batman hesitated. That's gonna be your job if we fail," he said gravely. For more of this story, check out this video on screen now.